made me convinced that I can't begin where I wanted to begin. So I'm gonna begin where the movie ends. I need to know what was going through your mind when Chris Hansen says, "I did this for you."
Yeah, I've seen, I spoke to Chris very early on in production, well before I even tried to film him. I couldn't really imagine the film without him. I couldn't imagine the film without one day interviewing him with hidden cameras and telling him he was free to go either. There was something I knew I had some sort of relationship with.
Hidden cameras, but he knew, obviously.
Yeah, he knew, but I knew that I had this construct that I was pursuing, but I didn't really know why yet. I understood that it would be interesting to have a paradigm where he's looked at in the film with all the ambiguity that the word predator has, with all the ambiguity that the word victim has. And the film's really living in that gray space in a lot of ways. But what I didn't realize is I'd seen him speak so many times, and I've seen so many interviews, and I knew that he was never going to surprise me with what he would say, because he has never really been asked to be accountable for any of this work. He is on the side of good. He's doing like an unimpeachably good thing, and he's had a whole career being supported and endorsed for what he's done. And now that he's on the internet and no longer part of a major news network, he has even more affirmation for what he does. And there's a lot of value to the things that he does. I'm not trying to say there's no value to it, but I think that when he said that to me, I'd heard it before. Like, I've heard it as a sort of pat, sort of the binary of good and evil.
So it wasn't personal to you?
It didn't feel personal at all to me. It feels like actually the justification that he needs to continue doing what he does because someone's getting healing out of it. But I think I debate the idea that maybe there's a world where just because we feel healed doesn't mean we are. And I think that that's what a lot of true crime and reality TV kind of helps us feel. But I doubt the efficacy sometimes.
And I think at least it helped me feel watching that. You talk about how he lives in a world where all he gets is affirmation. I've done thousands of interviews. I know what it's like to sit across from someone who's very uncomfortable when they're getting a question. He was not comfortable at all. So do you believe he believes his own, I'll say pattern, not bullshit?
I think I've never met someone who does what we do for a living. Let's say we in a broad sense, journalists, filmmakers. I've never met someone who does what we do for a living and doesn't believe that what they're doing is right. I don't know if you have, but I think everyone basically believes their stuff.
Except as soon as you say that, I believe it too. As soon as you say that, I go straight to Janet Malcolm, who says that every journalist is a con man or con woman.
Yeah, sometimes it just depends on who the con's for, right? And I think that you can delude yourself or you can convince yourself of certain truths till they become true. But I'll tell you, when I watched the Cambodia material that Chris did a year before the show was created, that line is not crossed for me. I like what he's doing there. I appreciate the value of that. Of course, there's a key difference is that there's victims, actual victims in that program.
That's why I think the movie is fair to him. That is unimpeachable good.
Yeah,
seeing in 2004.
It is. You're also seeing a man's full name being broadcast, his life lit up permanently, but it doesn't cross a line for me. And for me, the film is kind of living in a little bit of that gray space of where do we decide how much empathy or cruelty we're capable of, and for what cause and for what reason.
And you swing back and forth between it through the whole film.
You do. I think I do, and as a result you do, because I really tried to make a film that was modeling an experience that I was having for an audience to have it too, which is why sometimes it's uncomfortable. It's why sometimes you don't like me, maybe, or what I'm asking you to think about or do. Because I think we watch a lot of documentaries, and a lot of documentaries exist that are designed to just affirm you. You watch it, you turn it on, you know it's going to be in agreement with you, it's going to make you more angry about the thing you were already angry about. The film's over, you've got more anger, you're more affirmed in your anger. You're good because you watched the movie. The bad people are on the screen.
Well, and it's built into the whole enterprise that you've engaged in here. You're participating in what you're critiquing.
Mhm. Yes, and that was an uncomfortable part of filmmaking for me. To realize that the heritage of what I do for a living is not immune from criticism. And that's part of the reason for the release form moment in the film, which is pretty fundamental to my understanding of me. It's like trying to differentiate myself in some way from what I was filming, but in the process of doing that, becoming very much a part of it.
So talk about how this all began.
I was never thinking of making a film about To Catch a Predator. That wasn't on my mind or on my doc film wish list. But one day I discovered the online fandom community for the show, which is
So that was the beginning.
that was really the beginning. I mean,
You watched it as a kid.
to go back a little bit earlier, I watched it as a kid, but I didn't think anything of it. It was just a show that was on once. And then the pandemic, I had a film that was called Mayor, which came out during the pandemic, and it did well, but it was virtual, and during that time, the only films that people really were doing soliciting pitches for were true crime projects. I
What kind
couldn't
of network television these days?
I couldn't get anything, anyone's attention unless it was true crime. So in the back of my mind, I was always thinking it would be great if someday I could find a true crime film I wanted to actually make, but I can't imagine finding one. Maybe I can find one that's about how much I don't like true crime.
But I actually want to press that. You thought it could be, because it's something I live in every day. On Good Morning America, we basically, if you're tuning in at 7:30, 7, you know you're going to get the news. 8 o'clock, you're going to start to get entertainment and consumer stuff. You know you're going to be getting a true crime story, maybe 2 or 3 at 7:30. When we deviate from that formula, the audience goes away.
You've noticed that actually when you're like audience numbers drop off if it's not a true crime story
Oh,
that early in the morning.
1,000%. I notice everything. So talk a little bit about this fascination with true crime, because it's the same thing in our documentary units at ABC. 4 out of 5 are true crime. That's inexact, but it's something like that.
Well, we like good versus evil stories. I think especially in fractured times. I think that if we have a society that feels like it's bursting at the seams with deplorable behavior, and we don't have social floor to catch people, but we do have police, we like, I think, on a societal level, not necessarily on an individual level, but on a societal level, we like, and there are certain politicians who campaign on the premise of law and order, and providing protection from the world of deviant behavior and reinforcing that.
And this need for scapegoats that can symbolize our desire to find some kind of justice.
I mean, Chris's colleague Sean puts it quite well in the film. He's like, why do people watch true crime? It's better them than us in terms of this stuff. My life may be really bad, but I'm not on To Catch a Predator. I like that it's a way to find comfort in some of these situations. And it's not always as sordid as that for people who are watching it, but it is a simple story with a simple resolution that you're always going to be on the right side of. That's, I think, the appeal of true crime.
So you learn about these online communities. How does the film build from there?
They had been for 20 years collecting raw footage from the show. Very small but very passionate group of fans of the show who had found all this raw material. The opening of the film, the first 7 minutes of the film, it's entirely from the footage that they have found, from depositions, through FOIA requests, through declined defense packages. And I watched that footage, remembering the show, but I watched that raw footage and was horrified. I was horrified by lots of things. I was horrified by how I was feeling watching it. I was horrified that I would feel bad for these guys. I was horrified by the things that they would say. I was horrified by the sensation of watching someone's life end in slow motion that way. And I thought, well, the show didn't make me feel anything. It was the inversion of emotion to watch a true
all
crime
the
show.
gray comes out of To Catch a Predator.
Absolutely. And in a lot of true crime shows, but the thing that was interesting about To Catch a Predator, this was 20 years ago. I would argue that back then, there wasn't really a thing where journalism and law enforcement would work together to create entertainment. that wasn't a model that existed, and now of course it's ubiquitous. But back then, you had your journalism programs, and you had your...
It might lead to something later.
Right, but true crime wasn't a genre back then. It was something would happen, but and then it would be reported on. But it wasn't a genre because we didn't have the language for it yet, because we didn't understand yet that you could play with the idea of, is it entertainment or is it journalism? And that, because cops, for example, no one was presenting that as journalism. It was not on a news program, but there was, back then, Dateline, obviously 2020, these shows were...
But those shows, I mean, if you look back at the history of those shows, they didn't start out as true crime shows.
Right.
They morphed into almost entirely true crime shows because that's, the audience was telling them, if you give us this, we're gonna give you back our views.
Exactly, and I think that at a certain point, it's nighttime, and they can be past, we don't have the watershed in the same way as they do in the UK, but like past a certain time of night, you can show things, and it starts to entertain people, the numbers go up, and I think it then speaks for itself.
How much changed with the iPhone?
Well, I think that, it maybe goes without saying, but now everyone can be their own content creator, so there's not a huge difference between Steve Hansen and Chris Hansen, in the sense that they both have their own networks now. Like, they don't need a news program or the legal assistance of a news division for this type of work anymore, because no one's ever really cared about the men that they would catch in terms of legal situations, but also they're protected. They're able to do what they do.
I was thinking about it when I was watching again the end, if, and I'm pretty sure I know the answer to it, but I'm not positive. I don't think the Hunter story would make it on Dateline or 2020.
Interesting. I you know more about that world than I do, but I can imagine that there's a level of gray area there that enough doubt as to how we define the word victim, that I think it becomes complicated for the typical auspice of a
I'm
true crime
forgetting
show.
his name, but do you think Chris's partner truly didn't want to air it?
Yeah, I do feel that way, and I think that ultimately that was a hard fought battle for him to convince Chris not to. Yeah.
The scene with Hunter's mom is, and when you're hearing it through the bedroom wall, it's just heartbreaking. Have you heard from her, from him, from any of the other people you portray in the movie?
Yeah, I'm really grateful that everyone in the films liked it, and sometimes surprised. But Chris saw the film right before Sundance and really
Chris did?
Yeah. He had me on his podcast last month. It's called Have a Seat with Chris Hansen. So if anyone needs more content, it's out there. Decoy, the female decoy who works with Skeet, she came to Sundance and saw it there, and she's I think watched it a couple more times since. Skeet just saw it and called it on social media a banger. So there's a I think that this film might be a Rorschach test for certain people. I think everything is really, but I think that I've noticed very different reactions to the film, because I think it really depends on what your interest is in going to some of the places that the film goes to.
Yeah, I just want to ask one more question about Chris, but
Yeah.
So he has you on, he says he liked it. Do you think he's decided the best defense is a good offense, or do you think it's just so easy for him to always go back to 2004 in Cambodia and say, that's who I am?
I think both things might be true. I don't think they're mutually exclusive when it comes to him. I think that he has, as you do, a thick skin, and you have to. And I think that he's turned that into an ability to almost a skin so thick it consumes the arrows and turns them into more fuel rather than repels them. I think that he's quite adept at doing what I think a lot of expert rhetorical politicians can do, which is that if they're disagreeing with what I'm doing, it means that they're the enemy. I mean, they're the problem. They're the reason. And he's not he would not say that I am, and he's from Michigan, so he's polite, but he's not gonna, come out and actively say that he's got a problem with some of these things. And I mean, there's people who have been a lot worse to him than I have. I'm not mentioning, the fact that he was arrested, for something twice, in the film, and
You focus on the work.
I focus on the work that he's doing, and I'm frankly doing what I wanted his show to do, what I would want lots of shows to do, which is to genuinely give people space to talk.
And we have to wrap this up. So what is when you imagine everybody here leaving today, having a conversation about the film, what do you want that conversation to be about?
That's a good question, because I don't want to tell you. I don't want to tell, not just you, I mean, to any, like, I just want the conversation. This question gets asked of documentaries. It doesn't get typically asked of a fiction film as much, because I think that in fiction, we're more used to a film being about the experience of going through something emotionally that you watch that's almost unquantifiable and confusing, and you have to live with it, and it crawls under your skin, and maybe you dream about it, or maybe you don't, but it has there's times when you have an experience with a movie and it stays with you. And documentary, more often than not, is the provenance of, I have answers for you, and I'm going to solve child predation, I'm going to fix this issue.
You're gonna put someone in jail.
Yeah, and you're right, this is a problem, and because you watch the film, you now kind of can see who the good guys and the bad guys are. But I think the reason I don't have a specific thing that I want people to talk about is that I just want you to see yourself in the movie, and you can identify with anyone in the film, I think, if I did my job well.
My hunch is you have succeeded in that. Thank you. It's a great talking to you.